Our guest says inflation is low enough to justify more interest rate cuts from the Fed, perhaps even at the December meeting. We're joined now by Skyler Weinand, Chief Investment Officer at Regan Capital. Skyler, thanks very much indeed for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
There's always something to worry about, and inflation hasn't gone away, but you think it's benign enough now for the Fed to go on cutting?
Yeah, coming in at a two-handle here on inflation and with obviously no new data coming out anytime soon. Who knows when the government's going to open back up? You've had a couple of Fed governors come out in the last week saying we think they should be holding here in December, but we don't think there's enough data out there to get the Fed comfortable with the unemployment situation. And we really feel that's their number one priority right now, is making sure we can slide into any type of uneasiness and unemployment by cutting at least once more in December.
It is tough, isn't it, for Jay Powell and his colleagues, this lack of data?
Yeah, they're starting to look at, the ADP. They're starting to look at Trueflation. I've coming up with all these new companies I've never even heard of that are providing alternative data. But then the Fed is also coming out. These Federal Reserve banks, there's 12 of them. They have very, very large operations. We're talking about hundreds, if not thousands, of employees that are out in their territories gathering data and creating their own data sets away from the federal government. But of course, the federal government is the gold standard here in terms of providing data for them to go off of.
Just looking at the stock market today, we have seen selling in futures today, and apparently there's anxiety. Is this AI euphoria going too far? What's your take broadly? Are we in anything like a bubble?
Look, we had blowout numbers from Palantir, and yet that stock's down. Okay, so we're seeing a little bit of a pullback of multiples. Some of these stocks trading at 25, 30, 50 PE. Maybe the market is getting a little bit ahead of itself, and some of the large banking heads said that overnight. Hey, look for a potential 10% pullback here based on multiples just getting way too high. So the story's still there. The spending's there. The revenue's going to come eventually. We like some of the players that are getting the bulk of that spending to them, whether that's an NVIDIA, a Broadcom, a CoreWeave. So some of those stories that are getting a tremendous amount of revenue sent to them versus the companies that are necessarily spending that money to this arms race that we're seeing in AI.
Actually, I mentioned Palantir disappointed the market. Now, they did beat, I know, on third quarter sales, and they increased their revenue forecast. But it looks as though investors want, and there's a look at the stock yesterday. According to Bloomberg, its price to sales ratio was 85 as of last week, the highest in the S&P 500.
Yeah, the market is expecting, we saw that with Shopify this morning, you just highlighted it, where the market's expecting now these blowout numbers quarter after quarter. And that's what's already kind of baked into PE. Canadian stock market up 25% year to date, US stock market up roughly 17%. Those aren't normal numbers, especially after the last 3 or 4 years we've had that have been total gangbusters. Normal is 10 to 12%. So is the market potentially 5% ahead of itself? Yeah, for sure.
It's interesting. I mean, seasonally, this is a great period traditionally for the market, but September and October weren't bad.
Yeah, no doubt. We've had a little bit of a pullback, and inflation, getting back to that inflation number, historically, November and December are the lowest inflation months over the year after year after year. On a non-seasonally adjusted basis, prices are usually down in November and December. So we could see that pullback here to, let's say, 2.5% on the inflation side. That might get the market roiling again. But in order for the market to continue on this pace, we need to see really good blowout earnings and/or an even higher multiple expansion than what we've seen so far.
Right. Palantir, last time I looked, down about 8% in the pre-market. You have some stocks, though, you think offer real value here. CoreWeave, start off with that one. Remind us what they do and tell us why you see promise.
Yeah, you have a couple of different names. NVIDIA is obviously the big one. You have CoreWeave, you have Broadcom, you have Cisco. These are really the picks and shovels of AI spending. Mm-hmm. So add energy to that, okay? So you have hundreds of billions of dollars getting spent now on AI and expansion by Meta, by Google, by the big five out there that are in this arms race, okay? Mm-hmm. So you have the receivers of those, okay? You need energy. You need GPU, you need compute power, okay? That's where all of this money is going, because going and searching, doing AI searches, especially images, media, et cetera, is very, very expensive, okay? So the picks and shovels idea, you go back to the gold rush in the 1850s, and you're talking about Levi Strauss, mm-hmm. Where, hey, I want to buy the companies where the Metas and the Googles of the world are actually spending their money on, okay? And that might be energy. You're seeing some weird nuclear plays out there. You're seeing some renewable plays out there. And then you got the CoreWeave, the Broadcom, the Ciscos of the world that are going to benefit as well.
Thanks very much indeed for, for joining us, Skyler.
Take care.
Skyler Weinand, Chief Investment Officer at Regan Capital.